Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at amazon.com/new Alexa.
Quiet Riot.
Hello, Quiet Writers, and a very
Merry Christmas!
to each and every one of you, whether you're listening to this as a break from family festivities or celebrating quietly by yourself, and whether you're in Birmingham, Bristol, or Brisbane for that matter. I'm Kenny, and I'm here only to do the announcements today because we've prepared a very special Christmas feast for you, stuffed with all sorts of Quiet Riot goodies and garnished with the unmistakable yumminess that is James O'Brien. As is traditional at Christmas, we've overloaded our Quiet Riot plates so much that we are splitting this special into two, with the second part coming out on Sunday instead of our usual Sunday school. Ho, 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 indeed. We're not holding out the traditional Ko-Fi begging bowl today because, well, Christmas is about sharing happiness and also about being kind to yourself. It's been a heck of a year, so please cut yourself some slack today. Accept our heartfelt thanks for your company and settle down with Naomi, Alex and James for a very festive Quiet Riot.
Welcome to Quiet Riot, a politics podcast that's more Santa baby than bleak midwinter. I'm Alex Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith, the presenter bringing you tidings of comfort and joy.
Comfort and joy. So pour yourself an extra large eggnog, extract the cat from the Christmas tree one more time, and join us for a very merry Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot. Hello, I'm Alex, the Quiet Riot resident fairy on top of the tree. Really? I mean, Quiet Riot's star was right. The non-homophobic metaphor was right there for you, and yet you reached for fairy.
And I'm Naomi, the innkeeper who usually just says to those seeking asylum, yeah, come on in. Talking of things that bring joy, a big Christmas Day thank you to everyone who has helped us pay the bills on our show this year, keeping it free for everyone to enjoy, whatever their individual circumstances.
On this festive edition, we bring you an end-of-year roundup to keep you company while you run around sautéing lardons and remembering what you forgot to defrost. We will be looking at the biggest stories and the biggest non-stories.
Who is up? Who is down? What made us despair? And what made us laugh? And the moments that changed everything, for better or worse.
To help us navigate the highways and byways of the year just past, we have three kings in one. The only point of daily resistance, master of the monologue. It's James O'Brien. Welcome back, James.
Thank you for having me. Merry Christmas.
Genuine year-end joy to have you with us.
Yeah.
Who was your favourite caller this year?
Oh, Lord. I don't get the classics anymore. I don't get the kind of viral numpties. I don't know whether they've been warned off.
Cottoned onto you.
I think they might have cottoned onto me. It's a bit like Dennis Pennis back in the day.
Yeah.
It's no longer getting invited to premieres.
I did enjoy Brexit Richard.
Which one was he?
Brexit Richard was the one that knew nothing, but
Proud of knowing nothing.
Yeah,
was he
really
the one who
quite
actually
proud. He was like,
complained?
I'm not the expert.
No, he complained about me asking him.
Yeah.
What information he used to inform his opinions, and it was as if I'd asked him to sort of show me his cock or something. He was outraged. He was genuinely outraged at the idea that I would expect him to, because obviously in his world he is never required to produce or to show his working as a maths teacher would say.
And I especially enjoyed the lady that called in after Brexit Richard, where she was listening to the call and she was like, oh my God, that was so depressing.
Yes.
And you said something along the lines of, Richard is proud of being completely ignorant. And she says to you, oh, they're all Richards.
Yes. This is quite felicitous in all sorts of ways, isn't it, verbally?
Do you have to hark back to earlier days, Miranda and Kensal Green, perhaps?
You've been doing your research, haven't you? I can't. You can't expect me to remember all these
He's
people.
no Richard.
I love and treasure them.
You don't remember Miranda and Kensal Green?
No, what did she do?
That's a shame. It was your wife.
What Lambert Ladbroke Grove. God, that's 20 odd years ago, Alex. You can't. I mean, Miranda in Ladbroke Grove was my first appearance on LBC, my very first appearance, in a 10 o'clock slot that hadn't previously had any phone-in element. Okay. So listeners we're creatures of habit, radio listeners.
Yeah.
And because it hadn't been a phone-in show the previous week, or indeed the previous few years, no one was ringing in. I could have said the phone number like a kind of 118 advert. I could have just repeated it again and again, and no one rang.
Was ringing.
It reaches a point where it's 11:15. I've been on air for an hour and 15 minutes, and I hadn't taken a call. And I'd started off on this big, slightly arrogant mission not to book guests, because I want to be the most interesting thing on my programme. I don't want to book guests. The usual kind of guests who are available.
We know completely, so we'll book you.
Yeah, precisely that. Any old iron. And then at 11:15, I see a phone on the switchboard and think, oh, finally someone's ringing. I thought, hang on a minute, I know that number. It was my lovely wife who did break the seal, so to speak. Once she'd established that people could ring in, at least 3 more people did, including my best friend. Oh no, she didn't fess up on air, and I didn't have that. Now I'd do it in a heartbeat, because I love that kind of Toto the dog type moment, and the listeners love the idea of you pulling the curtain back and show. So now I'd go, well, we have a bit of a confession to make, don't we, Miranda in Ladbroke? But then I was just a curious mixture of terror and gratitude. So I let it slide.
I got booked to do my first ever phone-in when I was still a student at uni, and I'd never done anything like it before. And it was Up All Night with Dot and Adebayo on Radio 5 Live. And so I was there as a young Lib Dem student, and there was a young Labour student, young Tory student. I was petrified. I'd never really done any kind of live debating. With no prep time at all. And of course, the callers ring in and put the questions to you. So it's not even that you can rely on the good grace of an interviewer to be a bit soft and gentle on you. And we're going back in such time that mercifully, my boyfriend, now husband, is such a night owl that he was going to be up all night anyway. He lived in Exeter, I was in Leeds, and I had MSN Messenger on my laptop. He'd listen to the caller's question and then type little suggested things for me to say.
That's love.
And it was real love.
Isn't that lovely?
That's when I realised that, okay, I've got a good in here.
That is great. Naomi recently got married, if you're listening.
20
and
years
you haven't seen her socials updates.
Congratulations.
After 20 years together, they eloped and surprised everyone at their anniversary party, which was rather lovely.
Isn't that nice? Lovely.
Quiet Riot. It was the worst of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of foolishness. It was the age of even more foolishness. It may be a festive period full of twinkling light and hope, but what a winter of dark despair it follows. Just about the only piece of that Dickens opening that has survived intact is this. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. Only Charlie hadn't anticipated that these would relate to the exact same things, that half of us would fervently subscribe to stuff the other half would look at and say, are you fucking kidding me? So let us start with populating our 2025 novel with characters.
Okay.
Who's had the best year? Who wants to go?
I mean, I was going to say probably Alan Carr. If we talk about that recency bias. Yeah. I mean, it's been a pretty torrid year all round. I did struggle a bit with this one. Mark Carney, I think, has had a relatively good year, won a general election, passed a budget, managed to get access to that 150 billion
it's a stonking
euro
year
safe fund.
by standards. Yeah.
It's been dogged with a few difficult issues, though. Criticism from the environment lobby over certain things. Elon Musk remains the richest man in the world. He's clearly had a good year despite getting sacked from Doge and despite shitting on his Tesla base and all that way. But he's still really, really rich. But in the spirit of good news, I've decided to look closer for home, and I am going to plump for Ed Miliband.
Oh, yeah.
Because while most ministers have had to make some pretty difficult concessions or even leave their post in the case of Annalisa Dodds, who, of course, was very unhappy about the foreign aid cut, he has been able to advance at best and protect at worst projects he cares most about, particularly, obviously, energy and net zero. He's managed to get wins where very few other ministers have been able to.
Yeah, very few embarrassing moments in interviews and stuff like that.
You know, he's got those out of the way early in his career. And a lot of it was in the manifesto. So he can also say, you know, I am delivering And because of all of that, he is now still being talked up as a unity candidate for PM if Starmer goes. Now, he has said, if Angela is running, I won't stand in her way. If Angela doesn't, I would assume, therefore, he might try and, come through the middle of a left candidate and a right candidate like Wes Streeting. So I think Ed Miliband ends 2025 in a pretty strong place.
Is that real? Like, is that a possibility?
So
that he might have another go?
Everybody is talking about May being the point when the elections may not go so well for the Labour Party, to the extent that Starmer goes, and inevitably Angela becomes Prime Minister because Wes cannot get past the membership. So that's kind of the talk of the town in Westminster at the moment. Of course, Team Streeting are out saying there needs to be a coronation because the country cannot afford the flux of a distracting leadership campaign, which I think shows their fear that he can't get through the membership. So who knows? And then other people who are sort of, not necessarily Blairite enough to want Streeting, maybe worried about how Angela would go down with the public at large, might help a resurgence on the right somehow, because they'll be so apoplectic about somebody like her leading the party that they might try and push for a unity candidate to come through the middle. And Ed is kind of somebody that I think a lot of them could live with.
That's interesting, because he's had a go.
He has had a go, but I was talking about this earlier, oddly, and the thing that works most in his favour is probably that tweet from David Cameron about vote for me or chaos with Ed Miliband, because you could say to the electorate, look what happened last time. Look what happened last time you didn't vote for me, you fucking idiots. Anyone like to say sorry? Form an orderly queue. The other problem here, for me personally, is increasingly it feels like I don't have any fellow travellers. I just have people I haven't disappointed yet. Because even talking about Starmer's troubles, which you do calmly and clearly, and with evidence, there is now a caucus of Keir Starmer admirers who think that makes you, and indeed me, part of some ludicrous media manipulation, some ludicrous conspiracy theory. I didn't think that Starmer's core support would start going culty quite so quickly. But you are now not allowed to point out that senior members of the cabinet are openly discussing, if not publicly, they are openly discussing the possibility of replacing him without being accused of all manner of betrayal.
And the flip side as well.
Yes.
That people haven't moved to a sort of don't know position or a disappointed with Starmer position. They've moved straight to a Starmer is Hitler.
Yes, that's very true. Yes.
And anything this government does is the worst thing that's ever happened to this country.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It's extraordinary because I don't know that I could necessarily pinpoint. He is now less popular than Liz Truss, less popular than Blair at the height of the Iraq War. And I don't know that there is a thing you can point to, like the war, like a terrible budget, that would lead you to understand why that poll rating has collapsed. And it just feels like it's just an atrophy of a kind of broad base that he'd managed to cobble together to get himself into the position.
Well, my theory? My theory is that the riots were strategically fired up so that a very, very new government would get on the back foot, and they've never
got off it.
They have never got their feet under the table from the riots onwards. They have been on the back foot the entire time.
And it speaks to the online, doesn't it, as well? Because they were very much a creation of online activity. And I think Starmer's popularity stems, it can't be entirely due to this, but I'm as baffled by it as you are, the scale of the vitriol, the level of the personal animus. But the people on TikTok and Twitter and all the rest of it, he's kind of come in for Sadiq Khan levels of abuse, despite being white, which is, notable and interesting, but doesn't explain everything that you...
And doesn't explain the collapse on the left.
No.
It only explains...
Gaza has a lot to do with that. I mean, again, he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. He goes further than pretty much any other Western leader does, apart from the Irish, I suppose, and possibly the Spanish, but certainly further than any other British Prime Minister has ever gone, and he gets done for that as well.
Yeah.
So who else has had a good year?
Who's yours?
Well, the obvious one is Zach Polanski, right? I mean, in terms of momentum and achievement, I'm holding off on that because I suspect it will prove to be disappointing ultimately. But, and this may surprise you, I'm fascinated by the trajectory of Kemi Badenoch.
Right, okay.
I really am fascinated by Kemi Badenoch because she began the year with very few people thinking she would end it. in front of her party. Unlike Starmer, it wasn't...
What, the November deadline would kick in for the letters to go in and she wouldn't make it to Christmas?
I think it's fair to say that January, that would have been a fairly popular position to adopt. And unlike Starmer, back then, there wasn't even talk of giving her until the locals, because I think people quite fancied being led into the locals by Jenrick. And obviously, her fortunes have been close to transformed. But the reason I find it fascinating is because I don't actually understand why.
No.
She remains thin-skinned and petulant. She remains quite spectacularly ignorant. She remains utterly detached from the reality of the government she was part of. Yesterday, Jason Farrell at Sky News attended this press conference where they were announcing, forgive me, I think they were announcing another inquiry into grooming gangs. And she used the phrase, no stone unturned. At which point Jason, who's one of the best journalists in the business, said, well, that's exactly the same language that Sajid Javid used when he announced an inquiry that actually finished and reported and sent back conclusions.
While you were in government.
While you were in government. And you watch her face, and it's not just that she'd forgotten that. I don't think she even noticed at the time.
Jason Farrell, Sky News.
You just said that you didn't want to leave any stones unturned. And those words were used by Sajid Javid back in 2018 when he ordered what you're calling for, which was a review into the ethnicity of grooming gangs. That found, 2 years later, that most of the perpetrators of group-based sexual abuse were white. But it also found a lack of data. And at that point, Priti Patel said that you would, as your government, improve data gathering. Are you saying today that you actually failed, that that inquiry was a whitewash, and that you did leave stones unturned when you were in government?
We are not in government anymore. Labour is in government. So we are asking them to do what we think needs to be done now. We had an inquiry. It took years. That was the ICSA inquiry. And that ended up having such a wide scope that it couldn't look into this issue, into the... If I may finish, it didn't look into this issue specifically. Even I, who was, a minister in government, was learning and discovering the sheer scale of this. We didn't know everything we know now then. So I'm not here to build a time machine and go back in time to see what extra we could have done there. We did what we did.
She just blithely rides on from the fact that you've just repeated something your own party promised years ago, delivered, and now your whole position is... And so I've read articles in the Telegraph and the Mail where they're sort of saying, whisper it quietly, but Kemi's on the way back. And then, in one sense, she is. But none of it makes sense. It's sort of like another...
She's not, though.
No, but she is on the level of not being under immediate threat of defenestration. That's a massive win for her in the course of this year. And,
Okay.
I mean, it really is. If you were to take a starting point and see where she's ended up in the context of still being in a job, that's probably the greatest achievement of her entire life.
Her response to Jason Farrell, by the way, was, I'm not here to build a time machine.
What does that mean, though? But there'll be someone at the Daily Telegraph going,
she's on the up. She's on the...
And I'm sitting there, I'm going, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
All it needs now is an Alistair Heath column explaining how she's the future.
You don't need to have built a time machine.
The set would be complete. There. Yes, I know, you were there. And it didn't happen. And you can't I don't know. So oddly, I think she's had a good year.
Alex.
So can I just gently disagree? I'll tell you why, because there isn't enough polling movement for her to have had a good year.
No, that's true.
So all that's happened is that the internal pressure seems to have subsided. And I think that's because at some point, I think during the summer, the Conservative Party internalized the fact that she ain't the one.
Right.
That they're going to let her absorb the shock of the next local elections in May and then get rid of her, at which point there's no reason to keep being nasty.
Her bolt is shot.
Yeah. So I think it was at the point where they decided she was definitely gone next summer.
Yeah, it could be that. But I if she were a balloon, I think she is being inflated. I don't think it's a holding pattern. Yeah. And I guess the most obvious parallel would probably be with Liz Truss, someone who was so signally awful that understanding how people could have been queuing up to praise her is retrospectively impossible. Yeah. But at the time, it was fever pitch in the right-wing media, and I think something similar is happening. And I don't care, oddly, whether I'm right or wrong. I mean, I really don't care, but I do think I'm right.
I mean, if I were the next Labour leader, I would love to. face
Yeah.
Kemi Badenoch. She's a dullard. I don't think she can think on her feet. She's dreadful with any kind of interview or challenge.
Quiet Riot. If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it. Because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
Quiet Riot. Alex, who's your
Jimmy Kimmel.
pick? Okay.
Oh, nice.
He was in a situation where, like a lot of the late night programs, because people consume media differently, now his ratings were suffering. And Trump has managed to sort of single-handedly propel him to stardom. I mean, his actual viewership tripled.
Best thing that ever happened.
Is it Streisand effect? Kind of?
Kind
Sort
of,
Yeah,
yeah.
they want to close this down, shut him
yeah.
up, and then suddenly everybody
Kind
wants a
of.
piece of him. What a lovely position to be in as well.
I really like that, though.
Yeah, I do as well.
Because-
The backfiring
Yeah.
propaganda.
Well, it was a bit
Gone.
like when the Telegraph went for Best of Britain back in 2018 over, I cannot even remember what, and we were the Splash, and they did a huge, it was probably a Soros related thing or something. And that night we launched a crowdfunder off the back of it and have never, ever been so successful
lovely.
in an immediate email blast out. I mean, we raised hundreds of thousands off the back of that.
Gosh, really? I like that. It's got a touch of the Lineker's to it as well, hasn't it? I mean, I know they got him in the end, but when when Match of the Day essentially got cancelled as a consequence of them trying to cancel Gary Lineker, that must have been a particularly satisfying moment for him.
And,
So Kimmel.
Yeah, Kimmel.
What are his actual numbers? What have they done?
I think he's gone from sort of 2 million live
Yeah.
views, because obviously they get a lot more in the clips
Yeah.
and the YouTube and whatever.
Catch up.
So I think he went from 2, the first night he was back, he went to near 8, and then has sort of steadied over 4, which is just a remarkable...
To double your listenership in one.
Remarkable thing. And not only that, the secondary effect is that now all the late night comedians are really
Trying to
going
get
for Trump.
cancelled.
Because they are praying that he mentions them or tries to cancel them.
You know, I was at Dry Bar this morning getting a blowout. We have a party after the show. And I learned that according to Google, for the year 2025, I was the 3rd most trending person in the world. I just want to say I couldn't have done this. None of this would ever have happened without the support of loyal viewers like President Trump, who has done so much this year to raise awareness of our show. Thank you, Mr. President, for making me number 3 in the world. Somehow I finished ahead of the Pope. Eat it, Leo. This has been a strange year. It's been a hard year. We've had some lows. We've had some highs for me. Maybe more than any year of my life, but on behalf of all of us, I'm crying already, I'm sorry. On behalf of all of us at the show, I just want to say that we appreciate your support, your enthusiasm, and not just for watching. This year, you literally pulled us out of a hole, and we cannot thank you enough personally, professionally.
So, contrast, worst year. Who do you reckon has had a horribilis?
I've gone all political. I didn't realise we were allowed to introduce showbiz. It's too late now. I'm married to my decisions.
It's got to be mainly political.
I think we overlook possibly you two don't, but many people overlook the dizzying scale of Peter Mandelson's fall from grace. Don't we? I mean, it is.
All right, okay, I can confess now.
Yes.
We were thinking about Christmas card ideas for Best of Britain, because we always do quite a funny one. We send it to the lobby and our donors and things like that, thank them. And this year, because it's been an awful year, we actually couldn't land on anything that didn't feel like it was punching down, bar one very, very naughty design. There's a speech bubble. He's been. And there's just a urine puddle on the floor next to Happy Christmas from Global Council.
Yes.
Very naughty. Obviously, listeners, we did not use it and it was consigned to the recycle bin. But it was quite funny.
That's very funny. And that was the icing on an absolutely awful cake, wasn't it, for him?
Yeah.
And also, not to over-egg that particular pudding, but for an arch manipulator to be caught in such a base moment, photographed having a wee outside, not quite George Osborne's house, was it? It was George Osborne's neighbour's house.
He'd been at dinner there, and then his
Osborne's
Uber had
house.
cancelled on him, and he was busting for a wee in the street.
We've all been there. Possibly not George Osborne's house, but certainly bladder-related issues are familiar. But the original loss of the ambassadorship was extraordinary, really. When you think how many times he's been around. The appointment of it was the most ridiculous thing. They knew it all. The evidence like a vampire.
Was there.
I know it's an obvious analogy for the Prince of Darkness, but he refuses to stay dead, and this time I think he mustn't he?
Who knows?
Well, I'm pretty sure he
But
is.
it's his fourth comeback. And on every occasion people said, never.
He's done for. He's
never
toast.
going to come back.
9 lives.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe he's
got.
maybe.
But yeah, not a great year for Peter Mandelson.
You could say that First Past the Post has had a genuinely rough 2025. It's been repeatedly exposed as the electoral equivalent of square peg in round hole.
Yeah.
You've now got multiple parties vying for votes across the board. And yet this system stubbornly will deliver outcomes that make no sense. Huge majorities for some, invisible representation for others, and all the voters feeling pretty pissed off about it. I would argue First Past the Post has had a pretty shit year. However, actual person, and it's kind of counter to what you were saying about Kemi Badenoch, I'm going to go with Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
3 months ago, he was roundly seen as like the national saviour of the Labour Party, the one that was going to come along, bring the whole party together, bring the country behind him, this popular figure, man of the North. And he squandered it on making a move too soon with no obvious route to victory at all. So ends the year, now barely mentioned in the endless column inches and political podcasts devoted to who replaces Starmer next year. I mean, arguably Corbyn has had a pretty bad year. Much of his fan base now actively disliking him and encouraging people to join the Greens. But then actually, I think it's Zara Sultana who's in a worse situation because she's got many more years of her career ahead of her. Maybe the title goes to her, but I was going to plump for Andy Burnham as having a politically crappy end to the year.
Yeah, I think Corbyn's had a terrific year from Corbyn's perspective because this is kind of what he loves.
Infighting.
He's
internecine
grit in the
warfare.
oyster.
He's created just a perfect thing and then thrown everyone out of it that wasn't perfect.
Loads of pamphlet printing opportunities.
He loves it.
So who's your bad year pick?
Boris Johnson.
Okay.
If I try to put myself in his frame of mind and imagine what would it be that Boris Johnson would hate most, I think it would be being ignored. And this is a year where he was making moves at the start of the year to maneuver himself into coming back as a saviour. And then everyone went, go away. And he has been largely ignored. And everything he's written has been largely ignored. I mean, it's remarkable. People don't even comment online on it anymore.
What, on the Daily Mail column?
Yeah, they don't really share it. And I had to go after the COVID inquiry to see, oh God, he must have had a column out at the weekend. What was he saying? Because I hadn't seen
No one was
it
sharing it. Yeah.
No.
That's a really good shout, actually, because not only has his possible political comeback appeared to have disappeared, gone up in smoke, but he's also completely failed to establish himself in any of the roles that he might have hoped he would do. I presume he still gets decent fees as a speaker, but I also presume that the queue is not going around the block. And of course, this very clever rhetoric of the Boris wave of immigration detaches him from all of the people who might have clung to the carcass of his credibility because they are now blaming him for the foreigners.
It's been a bad year for Boris, I think.
Well, he had it coming, didn't he?
Yeah.
Let's be clear, let's be fair. Yeah, and again, as with Mandelson, I never say never. I don't think you can never count these people out completely because certainly in Johnson's case, they lack the whatever it is it humility? Is it humanity? They lack that sense of shame that would see them do a profumo or just dedicate the rest of their life to quiet public service.
And we're hearing that Blair's now been dropped from heading up the Gaza peace stuff as well.
That's
so
terrible. That's so sad. I mean, that's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's just absolutely.
Okay.
Can't the guy catch a break? Can't he catch a break?
Okay, so this, I think, leads me quite naturally to my biggest story of the year.
National or global?
National.
Okay.
I really think it was the second COVID report. I know it hasn't had the coverage it deserved, but it is purely a function of the distance in time that these inquiries put from the event, that I think people are not out in the streets burning buildings in Westminster.
Yeah.
I find it unfathomable that someone came out and said that but for the government being shit, 23,000 people may not have died and hundreds of thousands more may not be battling with long COVID today. All of the people responsible are still collecting money to write their columns or edit their magazines, or they're still MPs, or they're still in the shadow cabinet. And it doesn't completely compute why that is the case. But at the same time, I really do think it is the biggest story of the year, that there's been a full inquiry that took evidence, and a judge came out and said that this country's government was so bad at the time that it killed tens of thousands of people. And I find it extraordinary that it's not on every front page all the time, and that there seems to be no political repercussions for it whatsoever.
Or social. You still got Dominic Cummings doing what he's doing, and after dinner speech circuits, and these people should be pariahs.
Yeah. Or indeed policy ones. The government should come out and say, we've been talking tough on people who collect disability benefit. Actually, we are responsible as a state. We should be wrapping our arms around these people instead of saying, we'll assess you again, and if we don't believe that you're quite as knackered as you say, we'll make you get a job.
And you're right, the dots have not been connected between...
not at all.
Why have we got such an enormously growing welfare bill? Why do we now have so many more people claiming disability benefits than other countries? And a report that said, had we locked down even a week sooner, all of those numbers
hundreds
would be...
of thousands fewer infections. And that's not even counting the eat out to help out.
Millions
which
fewer
added
infections, hundreds of thousands fewer left with long-term post-viral impact from it.
So that's I think my biggest story of the year. And obviously it hasn't been treated as the biggest story of the year, but part of doing this is to say, I want to throw a spotlight on something that I think should have a spotlight on it.
I mean, it's a brick wall I bang my head against almost every day, because you don't know how big a reaction it would have got from the public if the people that the public rely upon for their news and their opinions hadn't been so horribly in lockstep with the people responsible for the tragedies that you described. You know, I mean, up to and including Johnson still having a column on the Daily Mail, and if he got fired tomorrow, the Daily Telegraph would snap him up in a heartbeat. And Michael Gove, as you allude to, is editing The Spectator. So where are you supposed to go for the outrage that everybody should be feeling? And well, that's what I mean. Whatever we describe it as, but the non-legacy media, to sound horribly like Stephen Yaxley Lennon for a nanosecond, but it is not happening in the organs of repute, or at least the organs of record, because they are part
the BBC.
Because they're part of it. Why the BBC's not doing it is more confusing. But I saw Michelle Hussein this weekend talking about how she doesn't believe the board are impartial, but everything has fallen, and they're all part of the same political project. You know, they're all part of the Brexit Tory Politburo.
But also they're all part, I think, of the same political culture.
Yes.
Which looks to be led by what people like and just reflect that back to them.
Which is populism.
Rather than decide what it is the story we should tell is today and tell it. They did a thing about the COVID report that evening, and then they went, people just...
People have moved on.
They moved on.
People have moved on.
Like
no one is shouting.
Being dredged up,
Yeah, it is just bizarre.
My biggest story of the year nationally is a very similar one, Alex, insofar as it's about the lack of dots being connected. Immigration and asylum. It has dominated front pages, news bulletins, social media all year. Yet none of the coverage, or almost none of the coverage, has joined the dot back to Farage and Brexit. That since leaving the EU, immigration from non-EU countries has surged. That small boat crossings have risen exponentially because we left that Dublin regulation. Tens of thousands of EU nationals have gone home, plus thousands and thousands of dual nationals who'll never get counted. So we'll just never know how many British Irish, British French, whatever, have left and
or
EU
nationals, incidentally, that got
that's right, exactly,
leave to remain,
and have now decided, actually, I'm out.
Have gone.
So this sort of quiet quitting of the UK, and instead of reporting that bigger picture, we just have these skewed headlines, populist rhetoric about Brits being crowded out, St George's flags being painted onto roundabouts, attacks on asylum hotels, and the economic harm of this sort of permanent hostile environment is barely mentioned. And the result is a country that is poorer, less safe, and arguing about the symptoms rather than the causes.
Yeah.
So I know that immigration and asylum is the most frequent headline of any news bulletin of any front page.
But it's the wrong
but
story.
It is also the wrong story. Yeah.
And James, 10 days ago, you had, I think, your best monologue of the year.
What was wrong with the other ones?
Don't do that.
Sorry.
But what James was talking about was the complete absence of connecting the dots, not only backwards, but sideways as well. Like, the economy is suffering. We're getting no growth. And the OBR, they put it in their fucking report.
Yeah.
They put a chart in their report that shows if you had kept to the previous level of immigration, you would have X billion more. By allowing it to plummet, our forecast for the next 4 years has been adjusted downwards. And no one is reporting it. No one is saying it.
Because it's the same people. It's the same people who aren't reporting COVID because it's their guys that did it. And it's their guys that unleashed the immigration genie in order to get Brexit over the line. And they can't even turn back and say, well, thank God we did that because look how brilliantly Brexit is going. So they won't mention Brexit either. It's a weird omerta of shame, which we could live with if, as Alex has pointed out, the people responsible for inflicting it on the rest of us weren't still being promoted and championed. The number of these wankers who are in the House of Lords because Boris Johnson put them there that should have people taking to the streets. I'll knit these two together actually because I was drawn to immigration as the biggest story and precisely or elements of that imbalance, not precisely that imbalance, but I think to marry the two together, I'd go for the explosion of young people not in education, employment or training. I think that is such a huge, and I mean, credit, for want of a better word, to the government for at least acknowledging the scale and the necessity of the problem. But this is huge because this not only necessitates more immigration unless they find a way of fixing it in the short term, it's also explained by the consequences of COVID, almost certainly in large part. There will be people there who are mentally and physically reduced by their experiences of both the virus and of the lockdown. But the idea of having a cohort of young people, nearly 1 million young people who have not been given an answer to the question, what's the point?
What am I supposed to do?
What's the point? What am I supposed to do?
And within those numbers, a rapidly increasing number of men, whereas previously it was women who would be overrepresented in that cohort.
Which probably also, my other contender for this was actually the painting of the roundabouts and Yaxley Lennon's hideous march and the way that was normalised by people who would once have known better. That creeping normalisation of Powlite racism that you've seen from Robert Jenrick and from Katie Lamb, which is surprising. Not surprising to hear it from Farage's outfit, like the woman who can't bear seeing brown faces in adverts. But the whole way in which the kind of columnists who used to mock everybody who called out racism, the kind of people who Stuart Lee was talking about when he talked about you can't talk about immigration in this country without being called called a racist. They're now doing the racism themselves. They're not even, those funny lines that people like Little John used to have, like they'd write racist with a W because calling someone a racist was a sign of your own weakness rather than your strength in the face of public bigotry. They're now doing the public bigotry. They're literally cheering on the roundabout painters and the white supremacists
and the people doing a pogrom by trying to set fire to
bingo
asylum.
and turning the woman who encouraged that sort of behaviour into some sort of folk hero. While, of course, in Farage's case, not that long ago, calling for Joe Brand to be arrested for doing a genuine joke, albeit a slightly fruity joke, a slightly spiky joke, but a genuine joke on a genuine comedy programme, not a genuine call for violence on a genuinely toxic platform. But it's the NEETs I worry about the most because I can't see much light at the end of that particular tunnel. I really can't. And that has consequences that are... coupled with the other elements of demographic change at the other end of the generational scale, that is a recipe for all sorts of problems moving forward.
Quiet Riot. This is Jason Momoa, and I'll be your finance professor today. Welcome to Banking Smarter 101 with Chime. Bam! First lesson, sign up for Chime and set up direct deposit. You'll be joining millions of members banking fee-free. Second lesson, get cash back on eligible purchases while building credit and a higher APY on your savings. That's how you bank smarter this season. Fa-la-la-la-la, class dismissed. Join Chime today.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and a secure Chime Visa credit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. Details at chime.com/fees-info. With a qualifying direct deposit, earn 1.5% cash back on eligible secure Chime Visa credit card purchases. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. APY means annual percentage yield. Learn about credit building and more at chime.com.
Quiet Riot. I think it's a tricky period, both because the economy has stagnated, and it's not just the British economy. Western economies are stagnating. They're just struggling to find the sort of growth that they're used to. And because of their finances, their debt is structured around the idea of having that growth. There's now a really, really difficult new equation to balance. And so you have that, which means you're not guaranteed a good job at the other end of university, and the introduction of university fees. And this is kind of now the result of that.
But James, don't worry, because we'll be in World War III soon, and all these young people will have to go off and be cannon fodder.
Well,
So
that'll do them a power of good. Yeah. I think we could all. That's what we need. It's a bloody good war.
My father used to say that. He actually used to say that. What you need is a war to teach you the value of things. We used to take the mickey out of him. And now it's actually a position. What about internationally? Do we want to... You go for the obvious one. Let's cover the massive elephant in the room.
Rather than recency, I'm going to go for that Zelensky meeting in the White House with Trump and Vance all the way back in February. And I think that was the moment everything tilted. And it was an extraordinarily brutal meeting, even by Trump standards. Publicly humiliates a wartime president on American soil. And it wasn't just a diplomatic car crash. It was a signal to the world that the US security umbrella was no longer to be relied on. And European leaders felt it instantly, and you could see it in the sudden caution, the hedging, but the fear of provoking retribution from Washington themselves. And from that moment on, Western policy shifted from supporting Ukraine with real confidence to managing Putin and indeed Trump with trepidation. And I think that White House humiliation for Zelensky is a tipping point, because that was the moment when Putin saw the West fracture.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
And then you've got Zelensky a month later or so warning in Munich that if Ukraine falls, Europe falls. And his words landed with a really new and chilling clarity for all of us, because everyone in the room had watched Trump and Vance make that nightmare suddenly feel frighteningly plausible.
Yeah.
And I can scarcely believe that come December of 2025, leaders of the free world have not got their act together to support Ukraine.
I remember feeling nauseous, actually watching it and almost being unable to take it fully in. What I mean is that you watched it and you knew that you were in a different world, that everything from here on in was changed. You thought, I am now in a different world.
I think we're programmed as a species to resist those moments and to automatically start trying to talk ourselves out of them. To try to minimise the profundity of that moment. And I think a lot of people did that. I think a lot of European leaders did that in quite good faith. I think the state visit was an attempt to almost believe, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. To believe that you could click your heels and somehow defang Trump or somehow turn down the dial on what he displayed that day. And I think a lot of normal people, a lot of members of the public who should be more repulsed than they were by that moment, have clung to the idea that, well, he has good days and bad days. But I think that latterly, in December of 2025, as Naomi says, the ability to cling to the hope has gone with this 29-page statement that's been released by the White House, in which the President of the United States of America allies himself with Russia and denigrates and attacks Europe, the historic allies. So
at the time where he's trying to defeat China.
Yes.
Right, so that's the mad fucking backdrop to it all.
Yeah.
That at the moment where you would want your allies to be there with you, you're shitting on your own allies, punching down at them, telling them they're all weak, useless idiots.
And then a tiny bit of method in it, which makes it even more terrifying, with the clear support for the far-right parties that are on the rise, or always on the rise, but seem to be having a bit of a good period in various European countries, expressing clear support for the likes of the AfD and Le Pen and Farage, but also attacking the European Union now, which Elon Musk has joined in on. And I think the method in that madness must be, because here is a rules-based organisation, here is transparency, here is accountability, here are freedoms, here is democracy. Democracy didn't appear on this document until page 16, and it appeared 3 times. That's America's statement of intent with regard to its foreign policy, and democracy barely gets a fucking look in. That's absolutely terrifying. So my thing was, oddly, and I don't think you're going to be able to separate the worst moment of the year from the mothership that you've just launched. I think, to invent a word, the sycophantification of the Oval Office is, for me, the biggest issue of the year. I was making jokes in January. And again, you could have picked the pardoning of the rioters as the biggest moment because of the message it sends, the rock that is thrown into the pool, bingo, and what it means. Break the law in my name and you will be safe. That leads us right up to shooting people who may or may not be drug dealers in direct contravention of international law, while releasing the guy, the Honduras guy, who was absolutely one of the biggest drug traffickers on the planet. I was making jokes in January about how long will it be before somebody in the Oval Office says, on a scale of 1 to 10, Mr. President, how wonderful do you think you are? Would I be right in thinking it's an 11? That's not funny anymore, because they're doing it. They're literally saying, my favourite probably from the One American Network news guy, Daniel Baldwin, who doesn't even come first. Brian Glenn comes first, Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. I don't know if he's out of favour because she is now, but he's the one that was asking Zelensky about why he wasn't wearing a suit. This guy from One American News Network, during that meeting, towards the end of the meeting with Zelensky, said, what gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back. When this deal ends, I really believe this deal is going to be over. Question?
Thank you, Mr. President, thank you. You had Macron and Keir Starmer at the White House this past week, both of whom praised your courage and conviction to lead the pathway towards peace.
Yes.
Part of that involved, though, re-engaging Russia in diplomatic relations, something that previous leaders lacked the conviction to do so. What gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy. Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Well, that's why I like him. One American News does a great job. I like the question. I think it's a very good question. It's a pathway to peace. It's a pathway to getting something solved. And I feel that as the head of this country, I have an obligation to do that.
And it is Stalin-esque, right? Or Stalin-esque. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary to see one of the historic cradles of democracy being reduced to this shit show of sycophancy, cronyism and corruption. And it's all linked. You can't separate it. So then you throw in Vance giving that speech in Germany where he accused us of having a freedom of speech problem while letting Saudi Arabia and China off the hook. The idea that because some woman terrorising women looking for pregnancy terminations outside a clinic in Scotland gets a collar felt routinely because she's clearly in contravention of exclusion orders around that clinic, and that's a threat to my freedom of speech. Fuck off. But this is still lapped up by people in our own country, this kind of Lord Haw-Haws who are joining in the demonisation of Europe in general, and now the UK in particular, and London very specifically.
It gets mentioned in this bloody
it's just come after him today. London is the model of all the things that civilised society should aspire to be. But if you're a white supremacist, you hate it because it succeeds. Yep. And so what do? You portray it as failing. It's all linked, isn't it?
He went for Paris a bit as well.
Did he?
Yeah, that's the first.
Well, that's fair enough.
Something has shifted. It has, in some ways, exposed what was always there. The problem, in my view, is that America has become so powerful, outsized from its natural allies, that it can dictate the terms of whatever it wants. And the only reason it hasn't done that before is because of decency and a sort of international rules idea and a sort of good chap theory almost internationally. And he is a mafioso. So he looked at it and thought, why aren't we squeezing all these plebs for as much money and as many favors and as much land and as many deals and as many minerals as we can blackmail out of them? And he came in, and that's what he's doing.
I think there's two sides to that coin, because I keep discovering things I should have known before and didn't. The Russian element, he went to Moscow for the first time in 1987 to scope out potential, 1987, to scope out potential hotel deals, came back and immediately took out 3 full-page adverts in US newspapers attacking NATO. Now, it could be a coincidence, but it seems unlikely. And of course, the twin narrative with NATO is the one Alex expounded, whereby America has borne much more than its fair share of the burden of security across the whole of Europe in post-1945, but largely because it wanted to. In fact, to the point of insisting on it, it was the role that they wanted.
And did very well.
And has done very well out of, but the nugget of truth remains for the narrative that's saying it's not fair, we never should have been, because you can't argue with the fact that you have been.
Yeah.
So you kind of...
I mean, I wonder if you went out in the street and asked 100 people, how many of them know that in return for America paying so much more into defense, that was the quid pro quo for the US dollar to become the reserve currency for the world, which has enormous benefits for them as a country. And so, this is the world we're in at the moment. Really, there is no other international story that isn't somehow related to really the world's most powerful entity becoming a criminal enterprise, because that's pretty much what's happened.
Quiet Riot. Rated E for everyone. Includes in-game purchases. Includes random items. EA Sports FC 26 is here. Play your way this holiday season with an overhauled gameplay experience powered by community feedback. Enjoy festive upgrades in Ultimate Team with winter wildcards. Take on holiday-themed challenges and manage your career, like navigating the busy Christmas period. And team up with friends and clubs with new tournaments and live events. The club is yours. Give the gift of football with EA Sports FC 26.
Quiet Riot. Last bit to end this session. Instead of pulling out focus, let's focus into the constituent nations of the UK, because I think all too often programs talk about UK politics as if they are one entity. And shall we go for, let's say, a Northern Ireland moment, a Scotland moment, and a Wales moment? Who wants to take what?
Well, I'll jump in with carefully in Wales.
Yeah.
And that proof to the whole of the United Kingdom that joining forces can defeat fascism. I think that the image of Farage in the town, preparing for his lap of honour
getting the nod that it weren't going to happen. And that all the calculations were off, and that the anti-Farage movement was bigger than the pro-Farage movement, and he's back up the M6 before you can say rat up a drainpipe. And I don't know how significant that will prove to be in the greater scheme of things, but it will certainly encourage les autres, won't it, I think?
I think it showed also an increased level of sophistication in people voting strategically.
Oh, and come on, it showed the collapse of the Labour vote, for
God's
sake.
This
is an incredibly safe seat for Labour, right up until the point that it isn't.
It should have been a no-brainer that if you want to stop reform, you vote for Labour. Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. But what I'm saying is that voters there adjusted to that new reality so quickly and read the layout and went, that's our best bet. And voted about it.
Strong local candidate as well, but not a strong local candidate who would have fancied his own chances 12 months ago, I don't think. And then lo and behold, there he is. So, there's a lesson there for all of us. Again, to go back to that brick wall, part of the reason it was all such a big surprise was because almost all of the UK media, I don't know what Welsh-specific media was like at the time, but almost all of the UK media was just anointing UKIP or the Reform UK, whatever they're called this week, candidate.
Well, how about you, Naomi?
Obviously, I'll take Northern Ireland, given I grew up there. I'm going to talk about Soldier F. So in September, Soldier F went on trial at Belfast Crown Court, charged with 2 counts of murder. That's the death of James Ray and William McKinney, and 5 counts of attempted murder for wounding civilians. If you don't know what I mean, listeners, by Soldier F, I'll give you a literal explainer. It's the anonymous name given under a court order to a former British Army paratrooper who is the only soldier charged over the shootings on Bloody Sunday in Derry in 1972. On that day, members of the parachute regiment opened fire on peaceful protesters, civil rights demonstrators and bystanders, killing 13 unarmed civilians, and a 14th later died from their injuries. We talked earlier in the show about inquiries that happened long after the fact. This inquiry was the Savile inquiry that happened in 2010 and concluded that the shootings were unjustified and unjustifiable. And at the time, the UK government formally apologised. But the trial went ahead this year in September 2025. It was non-jury, and that's pretty common for legacy cases in Northern Ireland, and conducted behind a curtain to protect his identity. And then in October, the judge found him not guilty on all charges. And the verdict rested on the judgment that the evidence was old. Most of it was hearsay. It was from other soldiers, decades old, and just didn't meet the legal standard required for murder or attempted murder. And I think that's such an incredibly potent story about Northern Ireland, because it underlies why pursuing legacy prosecutions decades after an event is so difficult. You've got lost, unreliable evidence, deceased witnesses, fading memories, legal hurdles. And at the same time, I think it shows this continued desire from victims' families and civil society, and many in Northern Ireland, to keep seeking accountability even half a century later. And the trial, to me, illustrates what I often say when I talk about the fact that there is a frozen and not a resolved conflict in Northern Ireland, and the tragedy of Bloody Sunday and the long absence of individual accountability, I just think left so many victims and their families feeling justice hasn't been served, and the acquittal will probably deepen that sense of injustice. And one family member put it, the verdict was 1,000,000 miles away from an honourable discharge.
Well, that leaves me with Scotland, and I know the decision was recent, but this isn't recency bias. I think the Sandy Peggy Beth Apton tribunal up there has been going on all year, and it's become a sort of crucible of the whole debate around trans rights, which really shouldn't be a debate, in my view. And what shocks me, I think, about it, as a foreigner, is how un-British it is. How incredibly rude and ill-mannered and thoroughly uncharacteristic of everything I thought was good about this country it is to be going into something like a locker room where, colleagues that work on the coalface of a difficult NHS situation go at the end of the day knackered to just put on a different pair of shoes and go home, and to then go to your supervisor and complain because the person next to you used to have a penis. And I find it both a perfect encapsulation of all the issues in that debate, that it does actually come down to enforcement. It does actually come down to individual people who basically feel uncomfortable with trans people, because that's what it is.
Yep.
And so you now arrive at a situation where even the courts are like, don't ask me. I don't want to get involved in this. And that's what the tribunal in Scotland basically said. It said, we're not making any rule here.
But tribunals don't set precedents, I don't think, anyway.
No, but the point is they could have given a view. They could have given a steer to employers. Instead, they've said it depends completely on whether anyone complains, which either encourages people to complain or encourages people who think they might be complained about not to use it just creates a horrific situation in so many scenarios that should be private and characterized by the solidarity of people pursuing the same thing, which is what it is with the NHS employer, what it is with sport. The thing that unites them should be much stronger than this thing that has been blown up to look so overwhelmingly important that 5 or 10 years ago wasn't even a thing on anyone's radar. And suddenly now it's the most important issue of any.
Leading bulletins, and even as a phone-in host, it's not something that people have a particular appetite to engage in or to talk about, partly perhaps through fear. There's certainly very little room even for thoughtful uncertainty as a consequence of the polarity. But I was struck by the way everybody claimed a victory when the result came out. Everybody seemed to think that it validated their own position, which is technically impossible. It can't have done until you explain it, and perhaps in a way it could have done.
Though trans people did not.
I mean,
of course
the tribunal said...
Well, no, because she lost on a lot of fronts, didn't she?
She lost on all fronts except one.
Except the harassment by the health authority, which has nothing to do with Beth Upton.
Which was more to do with delay and with not giving her a sort of fair chance to represent her position.
But everyone's doing, certainly the lapse of honour were visible from space, despite the inability to understand what exactly was being celebrated.
And the reaction was, on we go, we've got another 7 legal cases going on. And I just thought, well, who's funding this and why? Like, who is paying to turn people's lives into some sort of courtroom drama? And you have to wonder why. And it all leads to the exact same thing that we've said again and again and again, that if you draw even the smallest extension to the line about immigration, if you draw even the smallest extension to the line about trans rights, you arrive at a place where white women need to get back into the kitchen and have loads of babies. And the people who are concerned with all this stuff, they don't seem to get that that's the next step. And it's being made so clear. The other day, on the first episode of the Liz Truss show, Matt Goodwin said it. It was his takeaway point.
Good Lord.
Before listeners get angry, we need to mention Cornwall. Because every time we do a Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England thing, the Cornish get aggrieved. So for the Kernos among you, highlight for Cornwall this year, I'm going to go with Skybus celebrating new flights between Cornwall and London Gatwick, strengthening links so that more of us can come and invade your beautiful county while burning some carbon en route. We love you, Cornwall.
Quiet Riot. And that's all we've got time for today. Don't forget to tune in on Sunday for the second part of this seasonal smorgasbord. In the meantime, thank you again for being with us today and throughout the year. Thank you too for your messages, for your suggestions, and for your understanding when you've disagreed with us. Whatever the rest of Christmas holds for you, know that with Quiet Riot, you are always with friends. A very, very happy Christmas to one and all.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Reese.
Quiet Riot. I hear the chuckle, and that means that you're not someone who's been desperately affected by Brexit. You're not someone whose business has been shut down. You're someone who lies awake in bed in Middlesex having weird dreams about immigrants. You're not someone who's had...
You're very rude to me, aren't you?
Well, I am very rude to you, yes, because of what you've done to my country.
What I've done?
And now you're here to tell me you've got no clue about anything.
Well, a lot of people are rude to me because I've got very strong views on certain things.
No, it's not because you've got very strong views, Richard. It's because you can't explain a single one of them.